What is crackling, everybody? Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by Number Fire. That is right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberfire.com, as we are getting you set for the Arnold Palmer Invitational for PGA DFS. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberfire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for Number Fire. Brandon, the PGA down in Orlando this weekend, which is where I will be as well. Not for the PGA, but interested in that. We can partner with Brooks Koepka after he misses the cut this weekend. So I'm pumped for that. How are you doing?
I thought you were going down to play.
Oh, no, I
had you
didn't
as a
get the
value
sponsor
play.
exemption. For some reason, they decided to do a background check and realized, oh, this guy sucks at golf. We probably shouldn't do this. So missed out.
Would you be like a ball striking guy? Would you be like a short game guy? Is it all just good across the board?
I think I would lean mostly towards being Jim Furyk.
Okay.
Hair included. I'd be like Jim Furyk if I'd be a less accurate Jim Furyk. So the one good trait that Jim Furyk brings to the table is not a trait that I bring, but my irons are okay. It's everything else that is just hideous.
Okay. I mean, I was just curious. We never really talked about your golf game before, so
it's bad. There was one point in my life, this is no longer the case, where I'd have to aim about like 25 degrees to the left to account for the way things were going to break. That actually worked out well. Eventually figured that one out. It only took 6 years, but hey, that counts still. So yeah. It's not great is the way I'd phrase it.
Yeah, you just hit the fade, that's all.
Yeah, intentionally, There was like this one hole by my home golf course where there was a road directly to the left. I would basically aim for the road and know it would hook back over.
That's awesome. It's just like Bubba. It's like watching Bubba Watson.
Yeah, I'm basically Bubba. Again, if Bubba were bad at everything related to golf. But I'll be down there this weekend for a bachelor party. So again, I think my idea is to hit up Brooks Koepka because he should be available this weekend based on what happened last week. We'll see what's popping for him after he misses the cut, and we can maybe hang out a bit, get some insights on how he's feeling for the players, and I'm excited about that. Do you want to pass along any message to Xander or anything while I'm down there?
No, I don't want to mess him up. I mean,
he can't be rattled though. He can't be rattled.
That's true. I mean,
he's unshakable.
Tell him I said hey.
Okay. Hey, Brandon Gadula says hey. You're
Yeah,
like, all right.
He'll know what that means.
Yeah, he's on the down low. I get that. The big story of this weekend at the Arnold Palmer Invitational is Rory McIlroy because he is this massive favorite. He is plus 550 at FanDuel Sportsbook to win. So we're going to break down Rory. We're going to talk about other studs, some value plays, roster construction, everything you need to know to fill out lineups here in just 1 second. But first, as a reminder, a busy time of year here on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. We have the Heat Check for PGA and XFL on Tuesday and Thursday. Those are also live on YouTube at 10 a.m. each day. Search for the FanDuel YouTube page, 10 a.m. for the PGA podcast Tuesday, 10 a.m. for the XFL podcast on Thursday. NASCAR podcast not on YouTube, but it does go up every Thursday. We also have the Daily ISO with Tom Vecchio, our NBA DFS podcast, which goes up every weekday. And to get all of those DFS podcast needs fulfilled, just subscribe to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and get those right when they are posted. Let's dive in now to the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It is at Bay Hill Club and Lodge. It is 7,454 yards, and it is a par 72, and a bit of a smaller field here, which is a relief for sure. About 120 golfers in the field, and the regular cut rules apply, so the top 65 plus ties after the first two rounds will make it through and play Saturday and Sunday. So it's a long course. However, distance hasn't always popped up as being this ultra important thing. Brandon, what do you see when you look back at the data at the Arnold Palmer Invitational?
Yes, I mean, we have long par threes, and honestly, just all the long-term data that anyone's going to study is going to show the importance of strokes gained approach. So that kind of, factors in together. So that's going to be at the top of the list again this week. And honestly, at Bay Hill, according to the research from Data Golf, no strokes gained stat contributes more to scoring dispersion than approach does. Usually it's like putting and approach are about equal, but approach is actually meant more towards scoring than putting, which is just another reason to make sure that your guys can pick up strokes with their second shots, their tee shots on the par threes. So strokes gained approach just by far and away the number one. Of note, 5 of the 6 past winners gained at least 2.3 strokes on the par fives. Last year's winner, Francesco Molinari, actually lost 1.5 on the par fives.
Well, the shocker was Francesco, who to whom that happened.
Yeah, I mean, he gained a lot of strokes off the tee, but the par fives weren't there. But typically, we want some like par five scores, approach shots from 200 or more yards, encapsulate basically the par threes, and last year's top 15 in proximity from 200 plus yards had an average finish of 19.9. 7 of the top 15 in proximity from 200 plus yards were top 10 in the tournament. So basically ball striking, we need guys who can kind of avoid trouble. So I'm looking at strokes gained approach, birdie or better rate, par 5 scoring, proximity from 200 plus yards, and if you have access to it, Bermuda putting.
Yeah, and I think that's all. It's kind of what you expect at this point, just focusing a lot on approach. As far as off the tee play goes, looking back at past years with my process, again, looking at where golfers who did well ranked for the full PGA Tour season in various stats, and there really wasn't a major differentiator because last year, like you look at the top of the leaderboard, it was Francesco Molinari and Matthew Fitzpatrick, and neither guy is super long off the tee. Sungjae Im was also up there. He's not super long. So there wasn't a major split between distance and accuracy. Now, in 2018, there was. Like, Rory won that event. He didn't grade out very well in accuracy or good drive rate. Bryson DeChambeau is up there. Justin Rose. Those were guys with mediocre or bad good drive rates. But then in 2017, it again showed that you can win in multiple ways. And I think that's kind of the key takeaway I have is that you don't have to be long or accurate. You just have to be you have to be good in one way or another. So I wound up settling for good drive rates as my off the tee stats, despite the fact that this is a pretty long course, just because I want to make sure I'm not weeding out guys like Fitzpatrick, who showed last year they can do well. Do you have a preference among the off the tee stats, or are you just kind of deprioritizing that for this week as a whole?
I'm not deprioritizing it, but whenever I don't really find any preference in distance or accuracy, I look at strokes gained off the tee. Strokes gained off the tee is something I always weight in, even if I'm not necessarily naming it as one of my 5 key stats. So this week, right. I mean, it's definitely in what I'm looking for. So I typically just go with strokes gained off the tee. Good drive rate's fine, so I can't fault you there. But I've kind of found no real preference between distance and accuracy this week.
And that was similar to what I found too. Right. So it definitely makes sense. I think either way, I wouldn't put too much weight on either of those things individually. Find a more well-rounded stat that allows golfers to win in multiple ways and grade out well. Let's look back at last year's events, the Arnold Palmer Invitational again. Francesco Molinari won that one. It's been a long year for Francesco since that time. But what can we learn from looking at the optimal roster there as far as guiding us towards a particular roster construction for an event that does have a little bit of a smaller field?
Yeah, so with a smaller field, you always think maybe you can kind of punt more, and that's going to be the case. I mean, last week we saw Mackenzie Hughes at minimum salary really pay off, but the problem with that is it's hard to identify those guys, and they can just bomb a lineup. Last year's optimal was actually quite balanced. Molinari was the most expensive golfer in it. Of course, he won. He was 10,700 on FanDuel, and really the optimal was just the top 6 scorers in the field. Tommy Fleetwood was 10,600. Rafa Cabrera-Bello, 9,900. Keith Mitchell was 8,800. And then Matthew Fitzpatrick and Sungjae Im, both good golfers, but underpriced probably, as we would know them now, at $9,000 each. So what that means is all the golfers were between 8,800 and 10,700. So it's pretty balanced. And I mean, there were some guys below that who paid off at lower tags, but this is a tough course. It's a tough field. I know that the cut odds are a little bit better this week, but I'm still going back to kind of that balanced lineup build week after week at this point.
And it seems like you've been pretty fixated on the balance build for a while now. Is that mostly because the cut has been so brutal, or
It's
has pushed you there?
it's probably been more that I should have been doing that more
Sure,
frequently
sure.
because look, frankly, whether it's a head-to-head or a tournament, you need your guys to go like you need your lineups to be 6 of 6, 5 of 6 at best, and like it's better to kind of have that safety and have it be more realistic that your golfers make the cut than say, look, I'm going to punt with this one golfer who might miss the cut so that I can get access to a stud who, guess what, also might miss the cut, also might not live up to his high end of the expectations. That being said, Rory's a very different case this week because he's so good, and we'll talk about him. So he's going to kind of throw a little bit of a wrench into that, but I still think you can go balanced with Rory McIlroy in your lineup this week.
And I would prefer that route because I don't want to pass over Rory, basically.
Yeah.
Last week, I had a good lineup that had Brooks missing the cut. And I don't know if I should be like proud of that or if I should be like super, super angry at Brooks for ruining what could have been an awesome lineup. But it's interesting for sure with the new cut rules. Again, they're not new. I mean, it's been like September. So like we should be adjusted to it now. But I think potentially taking myself away from it and going more balanced may be beneficial long term. So I'll have to have you talk me into it throughout the podcast for today. We are now less than 2 months away from golf's first major, and FanDuel is rewarding fans who make the cut in the tournaments by giving them a chance to compete for their share of $15,000. Just finish in the top 50% of users in the weekly streak-eligible contest, and your make the cut streak continues. Best of all, you don't need to worry about missing a week. Your streak stays alive until you fail to finish in the top 50%. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's dig into past history here at Bay Hill and talk about a couple of golfers who have done well here in the past. And the two golfers we're going to discuss initially are the two most expensive in the field. So we're going to talk about them broadly. You're going to tackle Tommy Fleetwood. I'm going to talk about Rory McIlroy. And then we'll discuss what we're doing at the top end of this leaderboard entering the weekend. So talk to me about Fleetwood first.
Yeah, so Fleetwood's $11,800. That's pricey. I mean, he probably deserves it, but I mean, he nearly took down the Honda last week for his first PGA Tour win. He did not do that, and now the field's tougher than it was last week. I kind of thought that if there was going to be a week for Fleetwood, it would be last week. He almost got there. He knows he needs to win in America. There could be kind of some pressure there on himself, but at Bay Hill, he's come through. He's finished 10th, 26th, and 3rd. The 3rd coming last year. Can't really hate those results for Tommy Fleetwood. He's picked up at least 2.5 strokes with his approach play in 3 of the 4 rounds here a year ago. Lost 3.6 in the 3rd round, so it could have been quite good. I mean, he still finished 3rd, and that just kind of goes to show how hard it is to win a golf tournament. Fleetwood ranks top 10 in adjusted strokes gained tee to green in 2020, according to Data Golf. I mean, the recent form we know is there. The course form definitely there for me. 3 good finishes and 3 tries. So you can talk to me about Rory McIlroy, but Tommy Fleetwood is a very interesting piece this week.
Yeah, he definitely is, and he makes it an interesting discussion here if we want to go balanced, because that means you have to pass over Rory McIlroy. The reason we want to start things off here with Rory McIlroy is that he is the story of this event. He is, again, plus 550 at FanDuel Sportsbook, so we should probably discuss him near the top here, and we know that McIlroy's form is unmatched right now. He's got, I think, 6 straight top 5 finishes, hasn't finished outside the top 5 since September, so the current form, unreal. But he's also got a good track record at this course because this will be Rory's 6th time at this event. He has finished worse than 11th just once. That was back in 2016, and that really bad finish was 27th. Since then, Rory has been 4th, 1st, and 6th. That win came in 2018 when he shot a 64, just a couple of strokes off the course record. So he's white hot. He kills this course. The stats are elite. Any reasons for trepidation for you with Rory McIlroy? And where does Tommy Fleetwood grade out relative to McIlroy when you're shaping up the top 2 relative to the field?
So first, any concerns about Rory? No. No. He's been so good for so long. He's been so consistent. He scores fantasy points. He is always in contention for a win. Whether he converts on that win is another conversation, but really no issues with Rory. He really stands out, and I'm very much okay fading the most expensive, most popular, the favorite golfer of the week very often. With Rory, it's been so hard because he
Right.
does everything.
Right.
He just is always in the mix. So no real issues with Rory.
Let's stick with Roy for here for a second. How heavy can you see yourself being in tournaments?
So
Because
I
my
think,
guess is he'll be 45% in most large field tournaments.
yeah, I'd be overweight on that.
Yeah, I would too.
He's going to be on the majority of my lineups. His cut odds skyrocket. I mean, they're always effectively the highest in any field because of his consistency and just his prowess overall. But you throw that into a smaller field,
Right.
The leverage you might gain from fading someone like Rory, it goes down as the field gets smaller and his cut
Yeah,
odds go up.
for sure. All right. So what about Fleetwood? Do you see Fleetwood in like tier two by himself, or how are we looking at this from a tiering perspective?
If I were tiering it, very clearly Rory's in the number one tier, and I don't really
Correct.
view them as close. And the problem is Fleetwood is there's a savings there, but it's only $400, and $400 is not negligible when building a FanDuel lineup. But I don't think it's enough really to like go hard at Tommy Fleetwood this week. I would much rather bounce down to Hideki, who's 11.6. There's a little bit more savings there. Alexander Schauffele, big surprise, but $11,500. And then we had kind of had it like some of the past few weeks, but we get really good golfers at a bit of a discount just because the field's
Yeah.
tough, and we have like Byung-Hun An, who's a very good FanDuel play all the time, if so long as he makes the cut, which he's been doing. He's $10,300. Colin Morikawa is $10,100. So when you kind of view that all together, Fleetwood's really hard to justify this week for me.
I think that I'm in the same boat largely for the same reasons. Because if you were, and I think we kind of talk about this each week, but like if you were to make a heat map of the best tiers from a salary perspective for this event, I would say the hottest tier outside of just Rory in the tier by himself is like Tony Finau at 10.7 through Tyrrell Hatton at 9.9. That tier is like white hot to me. Like I like a lot of guys in that range. So
I'd even include Billy Horschel at 98 and Abraham Ancer at 97. So it kind of just
I
speaks to
agree.
that even more.
Yeah, I think that's also fine. But you don't get there without a balanced build. And we both want to use Rory McIlroy. If you lock in Rory McIlroy, you have $9,560 left per golfer. You can get a lot of those guys as long as you're willing to use some value plays. And like, I think that is an attractive route to take because I think that some of my favorite golfers relative to their salaries are in that tier, and I want to get them without sacrificing Rory. But that also means I have to lop things off somewhere, and I think that does hurt the odds that I get to Fleetwood. I like Hideki and I like Xander, but I really do think that the Rory plus balance build you were talking about before is hard. It's hard to turn down for me.
Yeah, and I mean, in my win simulations and just kind of, gauging the vibe elsewhere, like Rory's so much more likely to win this event than anyone who's even close to him in pricing.
Yeah.
And you have to factor that in.
Yeah.
He can just run away with this. He's just, I'm just going to play Rory in almost every lineup this week. I don't really see the reason to avoid it. If it were 156 golfers, that'd be one thing, but it's not.
Yeah, for sure. I am on the same page there. So let's move on to other guys with some interesting history here at Bay Hill. Starting up with your guy, Kevin Na. He is $9,200. What do you see with Na at this course?
Yeah, it's kind of a roundabout way to talk about course history, but he was second here in 2012, which is kind of way outside the range of what I typically care about. 14th in 2014 and 6th in 2015. So like 3 top 15 finishes, but those were all 2015 or earlier. Since then, over the past 3 years, he was cut 36th and cut. So definitely not great, but he's picked up in 2020 with kind of in like an all or nothing approach. His results in 2020 have been 17th cut, 14th cut, and 9th. He's gained strokes with his approach in 4 of the past 5 events, according to FantasyNational.com. But he has lost off the tee in 6 straight to start 2020. But I mean, really, aside from the off the tee play, which I definitely can't rule out, Na's like trending up. He can hit that high end, and we have seen it here before. And he's kind of back to his recent best. So the low $9,000 range has some other viable names for sure. But does Kevin Na do anything for you?
So I think that this is the right way to look at it, where like where is their form relative to where it has been, and Na is better than he was like over the summer. The concern that I have is that I don't think his form heading into those events is necessarily bad, because Kevin Na has been someone we've used in DFS a good number of times, and he would have been viable here most likely the past couple of years. I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but like, and the finishes still weren't that good. So I'm a little bit concerned. I think it does help him a lot. This is not a strict distance course, so I like it from that perspective. And he is gaining strokes on approach, like you said. That's all intriguing, but I think that there are other golfers around him who I'd rather turn to. So I'm not out on the profile of Kevin Na as someone who is trending up, and I don't care that he's not that great off the tee. It's more so it just doesn't thrill me enough to go with him over some of the other guys in that range, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he's not like my favorite play,
Yeah.
but we have seen it. We've kind of seen him come back to life, the past few weeks. Again, there are missed cuts in there, but
Yeah.
if we're looking for like that high-end finish for someone who's priced reasonably, I think that Kevin Na makes sense from that perspective. But again, I did mention there are other viable names in that range. I think off the top of my head, Joaquin Niemann and Scotty Scheffler are both $9,400. There are 2 value plays that really stand out to me. We'll talk about them, but I mean, I don't think you have to play Kevin Na, but I do see the case for it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we'll talk more about that tier later on as well. Now, we talked earlier about the Rory plus balance build. And part of the reason we wanted to go balanced was because there are a lot of guys in that mid-range who stand out to us. And one of them, at least for me, is Matthew Fitzpatrick. And we've been talking about Matthew Fitzpatrick for a while now, except he's usually in the current form section, not the course history section. But I think the turnaround for Fitzpatrick really started this event last year. In that one, he had a steady weekend. He finished 10 under. He finished second for the event. And that was actually his second quality finish at this course, because he was also 13th back in 2017. Looking at the stats on Fitzpatrick, he's really well-rounded, and it helps him that this is not a strictly distance course. So that's good. He is in a salary tier that requires a particular type of roster construction. But again, it's a type of roster construction we do like for this weekend. So I am in on Fitzpatrick at 10-2, but Brandon, this is a good tier. So what are your thoughts on Matthew Fitzpatrick in that salary range?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that we've been on him lately, and we have for, I think, good reason. If you look at the stats, like you said, it's pretty much balanced, and that's never a bad thing. He doesn't necessarily do anything to me that is particularly like elite that I can fully bank on necessarily, but like in this range, that's kind of the problem. He's 10-2, not like 9-7, which is kind of where we can get him normally. So sandwiched right between Ben On and Colin Morikawa, that's his biggest red flag for me.
Uh-huh.
But Fitzpatrick in a vacuum, totally fine for me this week. I just think that I would rank him at least third between those 3. And then from there, I'd have to look at Hatton, Horschel, Answer, potentially Victor Hovland, if we can ever figure him out again. So Fitzpatrick himself, totally fine, and I wouldn't fault you for playing him.
I think I have him above Morikawa for sure, and I think that he is in lockstep with Young Hun On. Shaking your head.
We'll make a bet, Morikawa and Fitzpatrick.
Okay. So you have Morikawa, I have Fitzpatrick straight up?
Yeah.
Straight up finish, right? Not FanDuel points?
Either way, it's going to be Morikawa, so.
Okay. You can be wrong. That's fine. I think
it's like we ever remember our bets anyway.
No, I remember it was a Tony Finau one, and it was the week that he finished 51st. I think it was at the WGC Mexico. Might have been like Sung J M. No, it wasn't at the WGC Mexico. Anyway.
I think it was a Ben On Finau bet that you won.
No, that was the one we bet on Finau 2 straight weeks. I bet on Finau 2 straight
But
weeks.
yeah, that's not surprising.
I know.
I bet you love him this week.
Talk
too.
about him in player picks this week as well. He's like, if you listen to the NASCAR podcast, you will understand what I'm talking about here. He is my Ryan Blaney of PGA, where I can't stop. Like, I just can't control myself. But we'll talk about that later on. I would say that I have Fitzpatrick above Morikawa pretty definitively, and that makes me like him. The question is Byung-Hun An. So let's transition into the current form section and talk about that dude, Byung-Hun An. He is $10,300. We are wrestling with the decision of whether we should put him, or at least I am, above Matthew Fitzpatrick. And the reason that I'm having that dilemma, even though I like Matthew Fitzpatrick, is because Byung-Hun An is good at golf. So, Brandon, talk me through this one and what you've seen out of Byung-Hun An here recently, and what you're thinking of him at 10-3 for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, 3 straight top 30s. The past 2 full field events for him were a 9th at the Waste Management and a 4th at the Honda. We know that Byung-Hun An picks up a ton of strokes around the green and just tee to green in general, and that's why we talk about him a lot. But he's also finished top 14 2 straight years at Bay Hill. He's averaged 5.7 strokes gained tee to green at this event. So you don't get a whole lot better than that, especially for someone who is priced at a bit of a discount. An is always very close to the precipice of where he's overpriced. If he's like 10.8, he's overpriced, but at just over 10,000, he's like fairly priced for how good his tee to green game is. We just know that the putter is, he knows it. We all know it. It's just not necessarily something that is super bankable, but in this smaller field, the cut odds do increase for Byung-Hun An, and then we're looking at a higher likelihood of 4 rounds of a great tee to green player. So how does he rate out for you? Sounds like not that well.
No,
or
he
not,
does.
Not as well as Fitzpatrick. I don't know.
No, I think that they're on the same tier for me.
Okay.
They're both above Morikawa. The problem that I ran into is while you were talking, I very rapidly talked myself into Marc Leishman, who is $100 more than Byung-Hun An. Leishman, 7th in approach. He is 16th in Bermuda putting. Not bad from a good drive rate perspective. Not bad around. He's not been on around the greens, but he's not bad. Good course form, decent current form. I actually might like Marc Leishman, ? Which I didn't expect, which makes this tier more complicated because although I do want to go with a balanced build that puts me in this tier more often, I can't use everyone, but I kind of want to use everyone. So I think that makes Morikawa an easier cross-off for me. But like, if I could find a way to get a decent amount of exposure to all of Leishman, An, and Fitzpatrick, maybe use the Gadula method of just using one, swapping out, using one, swapping out, using one, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I kind of like all 3 of Leishman, An, and Fitzpatrick, and it makes it tough because I really do like all 3, and it's difficult. So I'm not talking down on. I just very quickly realized that I like Marc Leishman, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the adjusted like approach numbers, again, from Data Golf, which is, I mean, you get like, it's a very good source, so definitely check it out. But Leishman makes some sense, and I think that this is probably going to be a week where I just make it simple, start with Rory, and then fill in like 3 of these mid-range guys, and then like 2 values, and then duplicate that lineup and swap one out and see what happens. So that's kind of where I am.
I think that's very viable.
Now you're going to gloss over the tier of like possibly Hideki and Xander and those guys, like the Fleetwoods. So that'll be interesting. So maybe we can talk about one of them here and kind of figure things out.
It's a risky endeavor, Brandon, because if you do that, like you said, you're missing out on Hideki Matsuyama. And, well, let's talk about Hideki, because when we talked about Hideki recently, what we said over the summer is that we were frustrated because he graded out so well statistically, but never really seemed to hit the highs all that often. He was just kind of more steady. But the highs have popped up a bit more recently for Hideki, starting with the BMW Championship, so back in August. Hideki has 4 top 5s in his past 13 events. He has been 16th or better 11 out of 13 times with just one missed cut, so stability and upside. He provides a lot of safety. The upside is, I think it's fair to say, more present now than it had been previously. So where does Hideki grade out for you in this 11-6 tier?
He's probably first in that tier. I think it's close between he and Xander Schauffele, but I would probably go with Hideki. He's trending up, and if you just kind of look at like the FanDuel performance, we know that Hideki doesn't always win, and we know that Hideki's always priced high. But I've just been messing around with some like field adjusted like fantasy points over the past 2 years, and since the start of 2018, Hideki's gained FanDuel points over the field average when you adjust for how good the guys are in 81% of his events. That ranks him fifth in the field this week. Rory, for example, is at 84%. So, like,
who else is up there if you have it?
Yeah,
do you have it up?
Yeah, I have Tommy Fleetwood number 1.
Okay.
I have my boy Colin Morikawa number 2. Rory, and then I'll have to double check the math here, but I have Maverick McNeely.
Huh. We'll talk about him later too. How about that?
I mean, I have 16 events for him. We'll have to, I'll have to double check that, but I mean,
got to be a name.
Hideki can score. What's that?
A name adjustment has to be in there. Like, oh, his name is Maverick. Sweet, give him like plus 30. Cool.
Yeah.
Log out.
Yeah, it's probably in there.
But I agree. Your assessment that Hideki is probably the 1A or the 1B in this tier. I would be okay going Xander over Hideki just because I think that Xander's upside is like unreal. And I also think his safety is not that bad. So I think what you're losing in safety from Hideki down to Xander is erased by the additional upside you're getting. So I think I would go Xander over Hideki, but I like them both. And I think they're both the top two guys in this like second tier. The problem is it's going to differentiate my roster construction. I'm not going to go Rory plus balance for literally every lineup, so that's okay. But like it does deviate me from where I generally want to be. That's my only concern. Literally only concern with Hideki or with Xander.
Yeah, my only concern with Xander, and the real reason that I think I would just go with Hideki, is no course form for Xander, and this is a course where it is difficult.
A lot of wind this weekend too.
Statistically, again, according to the research from Data Golf, like course history matters here more than usual. So that was kind of my tiebreaker between the two, but I like them both.
That makes sense. Let's move down to some cheaper golfers, starting off with Max Homa, and he's $9,700. He is a guy we discussed in current form not that long ago because he had been trending up. Homa in that good tier, though, that could be the one potential negative. But what do you see with Max Homa's current form recently at $9,700?
Yeah, I kind of listed him because I was like, oh, he'll be in like the low 9,000s, and that'll be a good way to differentiate. But I wanted to keep with him because he kind of fit the talking point here at $9,700. So he's not super cheap, but definitely fits in that balanced lineup build, which, again, I think we're both on the same page that this week with that kind of default construction. Now, he's had 2 weeks off, but prior to that, Homa finished top 14 in 4 straight events, and he's kind of made that happen with great all-around play. In those 4 events across the 4 strokes gained stats, so if you like picture it like a grid, there's like 16 different areas. He's lost strokes in only one of those when he lost 0.5 around the green at Pebble Beach, which we know is not even like complete. Homa, no Bay Hill form. And again, this is a course where that typically matters a good bit, but does he do anything for you to kind of make that list for you? Or is he someone who you're not really going to chase the current form?
I like the current form a lot. And like I said, like we've talked about him in the current form section a couple of times now. And like the sample of him doing really well is getting larger. So it's harder to be skeptical of it. The problem is, I think that the salaries account for that current form because you mentioned Billy Horschel before. He is $100 more. Earl Hatton is $200 more. Victor Hovland is $200 more. So although I think it is smart to potentially buy high on Max Homa, the buy high window is closed because his salary already accounts for his form. So I like what I've seen and am okay with him, but I'm not going to use him over Horschel, not going to use him over Hatton, and I think that's going to push me away. So I like it, and I like him. I just don't like him more than those guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I kind of came to the same conclusion. Again, I was expecting him to be a little bit cheaper. I'm not saying it's a bad price.
Right.
It makes sense. But if you're looking for someone who's really trending up, who's really hot, Homa fits that. But I still would rather bank on some of those other guys this week. So on the same page with you. I'm not going to talk anyone out of playing Max Homa, but I don't think I'll quite get there myself.
So we want to buy into Max Homa because it seems like the current form is good, but the salary doesn't allow us to. Maybe we'll with Maverick McNeely because he is only $8,800 and he's 65-1, which is actually the exact same odds as Max Homa. And I would guess all that optimism from a betting perspective comes from his current form because McNeely enters this event having made 11 consecutive cuts. He has just 4 top 20s in that time, but 3 of those top 20s have come within the past 4 events, and that does include a 5th place finish at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, so good upside there. Some of this has been fueled by putting, and Bermuda is not his best putting surface, but he also gained 5.1 strokes in approach at the Honda Classic, and he's now gained an approach in all 4 PGA Tour events since January 1st. And we tend not to buy into small samples if they're with older golfers, but McNeely's 24, and that makes sense that he might make some gains. So have you seen enough from McNeely to take some stabs here as a value play at $8,800?
I don't know if I see enough not to chase it, which is kind of how I tend to approach things. I try to be a little bit more skeptical and see, there's got to be a reason not to play him. Now, you mentioned he's kind of been fueled by his putter, and that's definitely the case. But the problem is I don't want to bank on like the 5.1 strokes approach at the Honda because 1 week samples really pretty irrelevant. But he has been kind of gaining, for the most part in 2020, like you said. So that helps me. And for $8,800, we don't need him to win necessarily. I don't know what the upside is, but overall, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. I'm intrigued, I would say. And this is a good tier. I think at least I think it's a good tier. There are a couple other golfers I like who are right near McNeely's salary, but I'm still okay with taking some stabs at McNeely and still filtering because I'm going to need more than one value play to go Rory plus balanced. So I think that's fine. I'm in on him on McNeely. He is not my number one guy in this tier, but he doesn't need to be in order to make my player pool. Whereas like with the other ranges, you kind of do have to be at the top. Yeah. He's kind of like probably third, I would say, for me below 9,000, and that's okay. I can definitely get behind that still.
Yeah, it comes down to how willing you are to buy into a small sample on a young guy because we can see those turnarounds, we can see those adjustments be made. The long-term form not promising. So like again, that's what I typically use for like projecting wins. I'm not saying that McNeely is going to win, but his odds have moved from 100-1 to 65-1. So some people think he might have it. I don't think I'm quite there myself.
Doesn't have to win, though, so we will certainly take it. For Maverick McNeely at $8,800. Let's take a look at those odds. As you mentioned, over at FanDuel Sportsbook, Rory is the favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook. He is plus 550, then it drops all the way down to 14-1, where you find Tommy Fleetwood. Bryson DeChambeau is next up at 16-1. Hideki Matsuyama and Xander Schauffele are both 20-1 before it dips down to a gaggle of golfers who are all 27-1. That is Adam Scott, Brooks Koepka, Jason Day, Patrick Reed, and Sung J M. And then Tony Finau rounds at the top group at 31-1. I could have stopped after Sung J M, but we had to get Finau in there because obligatory Finau mention for me. That's just kind of where I'm at. Any final thoughts for you on roster construction for this week? I think we've done a good job of talking about how we want to go Rory plus balance and how we're focusing on Hideki and Xander in that second range. Anything else noteworthy of you for the upper tier?
For the upper tier, no, I think I'm really going to concentrate my ownership, my exposure to Rory, Hideki, and Xander, and then bump down toward like the Ben On, Colin Morikawa range.
I think that's where I'm at too, with some Finau in there because he's kind of in that middle range between them. He's 10-7, but hey, still going to make it work. Which golfers' odds have moved since things opened yesterday at FanDuel Sportsbook?
So Adam Scott was 20-1. He's now 27. And then we've also seen small movement from Ricky from 33 to 34 for what that's worth. But in terms of the guys whose odds have shortened, Matthew Fitzpatrick from 40 to 34. Abraham Answer from 60 to 55. Again, Maverick McNeely was 100 to 1, but he's now 65 to 1. And then I have Kevin Na from 100 to 80.
So you're still out on Matthew Fitzpatrick, even though the betting's there, huh? Uh-huh.
I mean, I said I'm not out on him. It's just he's like at least third in that range for me.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to you paying up Friday after it becomes abundantly clear Matthew Fitzpatrick is going to just run laps around Colin Morikawa. Which lower salary golfers have odds that stand out to you here?
So I botched this one. I pulled the movement and then forgot to adjust my spreadsheet. So I'm gonna have to do this on the fly. But well, typically I'm ready for it. But I have Maverick McNeely now at 65 to 1. He's $8,800, and then Kevin Kisner and Brendan Steele are both 70 to 1 at $9,500, and then Joaquin Niemann, Wyndham Clark, Kevin Na, Harris English are all 80 to 1. So those are the kind of guys who have it like 80 to 1 or better in price below $9,500. Then we kind of have like two big tiers, 90 and 100. I'm not really even going to get into the guys who are 100 to 1. But at 90 to 1, we have Scotty Scheffler, Charles Schwartzel. No thanks there. Your boy from last week, your replacement, Jt Poston. Francesco
looks good for a couple days.
Yeah. Francesco Molinari, JB Holmes, Jason Kokrak, Joel Damon, and Bud the Bod Collie, all 90 to 1. Of those, I like Scheffler, maybe Kokrak. He's kind of like an alternate option down there. I like Niemann. And that's kind of it.
You don't like Poston?
No.
I'll talk you into him later. What about Bud Collie?
He's fine. Like 21st in approach. Over the past 50 rounds.
8th around the green, 33rd in Bermuda putting.
Not a whole lot of birdies. Good scrambler. There's probably some safety in there.
Okay. The other guy who, his numbers stood out to me a tiny bit was Kevin Kisner, but the problem is he's 95, and I don't think I'll be in that range all that often, and I'd be okay going Niemann over Kevin Kisner, just because Niemann's a lot more fun. I know that shouldn't be the driving force in my decision making. Also, Scheffler's 94 as well. I'd rather just go with them. So Kisner was semi-interesting because I do want to get some well-rounded golfers, but I'd rather just go Niemann and Scheffler. So I think that's where I'm winding up there.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind, it's always tough, or for me, I mean, some people might be sitting there this is the most obvious thing ever, but when you're voting FanDuel lineups, finishing position matters, but FanDuel points matter more. Uh-huh. And I've always kind of anecdotally thought that Kisner just doesn't rack up a lot of fantasy points, and that's actually the case because I started pulling some data on it, and between he, Scheffler, and Niemann, the other two guys score fantasy points at a much better rate than Kevin Kisner.
Makes sense because they're good. And I like both of them. Weather for this weekend is actually impactful. So just putting that note out there right now. Thursday is going to be windy, especially in the afternoon. Wind speeds start around 5 miles per hour for the early tee times, but they could be as high as 20 miles per hour by 3 p.m. And then it's windy again on Friday, but the wind is elevated the entire day. So if you are looking for a window of golfers that will potentially get a reprieve from the wind, that's the guys teeing off early on Thursday. And I think that it is significant enough where I actually feel comfortable giving those golfers a bump and rolling out some tee time stacks for this weekend based on guys who will be teeing off early Thursday. It's not enough where I would avoid Rory McIlroy if he were to draw an early tee time. However, it will not significantly impact. It will have a noticeable impact, though, on my lineups. Getting guys, at least based on the way things look right now, for the early tee times on Thursday. The wind stays high the entire weekend, so it might not be bad to look at wind splits more broadly as well. So I would just flag it that normally I'm okay kind of degaff in the weather segment. I'm not going to do that this week. I think that it actually is important. Is that, based on the way it sounds, Brandon, is that enough for you to stack some tee times or alter your approach at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, but maybe this will help because it's a pretty good field, like top to bottom.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll help me differentiate or like narrow down my player pool and kind of not play too many guys and try to really maximize the correlations for the tee times. So I'm gonna have to deal with wind.
And let us pray that Rory draws well. That is all that I will say there. Let's move now to our player picks for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Brandon, starting off with you in the upper tier, which studs are you targeting for this weekend?
I'm going to go with Hideki at 11-6. He's 20-1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. We know that the putter is not great. He's not good on Bermuda. He's actually very bad on Bermuda. But just kind of stick with me here to put it in perspective. He's finished 21st, 6th, 45th, 49th, and 33rd at Bay Hill over the past 5 years, which sounds not great. But he has picked up strokes tee to green in 80% of those 20 rounds, but added strokes with his putter in just 25% of those rounds. So he could be very, very, very good, have very good finishes here. Now, I know that there's risk, but if he can putt even like halfway decently, he actually does kind of a lot to me to separate himself from everyone other than Rory and potentially Xander. He's third in the field in strokes gained tee to green over the past 50 rounds, sixth in approach. So he is like on the he's my I guess 2A behind Rory, and I feel pretty confident in that.
And Xander's 2B?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd probably flip him, but I think that's the way to view it. The reason I flipped them is because I am very worried about Hideki's putting. But I think that your point about Xander not having course form is good. So I understand, and I would not argue with you about putting Hideki over Xander. My first high salary guy is, shocker, Rory McIlroy, because who cares about game theory? I will stop using Rory McIlroy when it stops working. It has not done that yet. And he's now been the top 5 for 6 straight events, 2 of which were WGC events, so really tough fields, and he's beating them. He is 34th or better in each of my 4 big stats, and that does include Bermuda putting. Bermuda is Rory's best putting service, and that eliminates the one thing you could potentially point to as being negative in his game. It is far less negative here. He's actually a good Bermuda putter, so he will be the uber chalk. Again, I'm projecting, if I were just projecting in my head, like 45% ownership, but I will do what I have to get overweight on that. So Rory McIlroy, I understand the allure of not using him. I will not be that person. If you do it, cool. Good for you. You have more guts than I do, but I'm not going to do it. Any final thoughts for you on Rory, Brandon?
What if he draws the worst possible tee time?
I will lower my exposure from 80 to 70.
Okay.
I
don't know. I mean,
65.
We saw it with Justin Thomas, like, you know.
Yeah, that's true. That was a little bit more extreme, but
Yes.
like this is still pretty extreme. So
Yeah.
I get it. Who else do you like in the upper tier?
I'm going to stick with what I've kind of been preaching and go with Byung-Hoon Ahn at $10,300. He's like the anti-Ricky Fowler in that he's very good tee to green and just a terrible putter. I'm not saying that Ricky's like awful, but Ricky's priced down this week, and I kind of had some interest in him, but I think that the better play is to go with Ben Ahn. He is 111th in Bermuda putting over the past 100 rounds, but over the past 50 rounds overall, he's 7th in the field in strokes gained tee to green. It's a really balanced tee to green profile as well. He's very elite around the green, which I think is going to be important this week. He's gained FanDuel points over the field average and adjusted for field strength in 75% of his events since the start of 2018. It's very good. So I'm fine if I go with Rory McIlroy and jump the whole way down to Ben Ahn as my second most expensive golfer in a lineup.
I could see you jumping all the way down there, but you would miss out on Marc Leishman, who I'm apparently into now. You'd also miss out on my boy, Tony Finau, because McIlroy is super expensive. And if you go like with Tony Finau, your lineup is less balanced. But I still want to go with Tony Finau at 10-7. Let me talk about Tony Finau here. He is a good statistical fit for the course. He is 8th in good drive rate. He is 15th in approach. He's 7th around the green. And Bermuda is Finau's worst putting surface. I'm going to use that as a negative for Hideki Matsuyama. I should note it for Tony Finau, but he's not terrible on Bermuda, not as bad as Hideki at least. And the hope is that what he'll be able to do in other departments can make up for it. He fits what I want from a build perspective, and I like it a lot for 10-7. So I'm back in on Tony Finau. Why are you so hateful of my boy?
I mean, I like Tony Finau.
I know, but I have to paint you as the villain here because I can.
I just prefer a lot of other golfers this week over Finau. I mean, statistically, it's great.
Mistake. Would you, straight up, if they're the same salary, would you take Byung-Hun An over Tony Finau again and repeat your past mistake?
Probably not.
Oh.
But, I mean, $400, like I said, it goes a ways.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so basically, if I'm doing the math right, which is always a risk when I'm doing live math, you can get Rory and Ben on for the same price as Finau.
Rory is a sunk cost. He's going to be in there no matter what. So that's not the way I'm viewing it. It would be more like, this is a good one. This one would get me to hesitate. It is Ben On and Tyrrell Hatton, or Tony Finau and like Kevin Kisner or Joaquin Niemann. That would be a convincing argument to me that the $400 is worth it to sacrifice to go Byung-Hun An or Matthew. Well,
then go with that one.
I think that like
but you convinced yourself.
No, I think that's a fair argument, but I'm still going to get my Tony Finau in.
All right,
why not? Roll Tide.
Have fun with Kevin Kisner.
No, I'm not going Kevin Kisner. We already talked about this. I'm not going there. So when Scotty Scheffler wins, and that extra $400 means nothing, I'm going to leave $400 on the table just to flex with Tony Finau in there and be like, come at me now, bro.
I don't even like, I mean, it sounds like I'm anti Kevin Kisner, which isn't the case. I just like, just from a fantasy perspective.
No, you hate him. You hate Tony Finau too. Who are some golfers you don't hate in the middle tier?
I think this is the third straight week that I'm doing this, but I'm going with someone who's $10,100 because
it worked
our podcast.
With Patrick Reed, though.
It did, and that means that maybe
I'll
keep bumping it up.
Win. I'm going to lose my bet. Oh gosh,
I'll keep bumping it up each week. Like
Rory McIlroy is a good mid-range play. Masters.
Yeah, but like I'm really into the idea of a balanced build this week, and again, I used this example, I think, already, but like we saw Mackenzie Hughes pay off at minimum salary, but finding those guys is not easy to do. And I would rather elevate my lineup's floor, which also in golf elevates its ceiling, because made cuts mean more holes, which means more fantasy points. But he's really, Morikawa is really, I think, the beneficiary of this field. He is 18th in FanDuel salary. Actually played here 2 years ago, finished 64th. And what I think was his second ever PGA Tour event, but in that he lost strokes putting in every round, added strokes tee to green in all 4 rounds, finished actually 18th in strokes gained tee to green. So I like that. It's scant course form, but I like it. Only 20 rounds on Bermuda for him. The putting in that sample has been very bad, but he's the field leader in approach over the past 50 rounds. Like I'm going to use a lot of Colin Morikawa at $10,100, and I think I mentioned this before, but gains a lot of FanDuel points.
Yeah, that's all good. His second place finish behind Matthew Fitzpatrick will also be good. So I'm not saying I dislike Colin Morikawa. It's more so I like on Fitzpatrick and Leishman all more. So Morikawa's good. I just think they're a tiny bit better. So that's my only point of detraction for Colin Morikawa. My first middle tier guy is actually just beneath this tier, and I think is part of this tier because of how good he is, and that's Tyrrell Hatton. And Hatton came through for us in a big way at the WGC Mexico. Despite a long layoff and a surgery, he's shaping up as another high-quality option again here, because the big appeal for me with Hatton is that he's well-rounded. He is 10th in good drive rate. He is 40th in approach, ninth around the green over the past 50 rounds. And that's in addition to being a solid Bermuda putter. We don't often get guys who will check all 4 boxes, but Hatton does. And he has a win in 3 top 5s in his past 5 events. He showed that rust was not an issue at the WGC Mexico, where he gained 10.6 strokes tee to green, had like a top 5 or 6 finish there, despite gaining, I think, like 0.4 strokes putting. So he's awesome. I do like Matthew Fitzpatrick in this range. I do like I like Leishman, but I think Hatton, the savings here are good. So I'm not going to, forego those guys. But if I need to bump down to Hatton or to fit in someone else, I am okay with that because I think the Hatton is really good. Any thoughts for you on Tyrrell Hatton?
I mean, I like him a lot. I'm going to use him, and the tee to green play has been very good. So he's not just a putter. I don't know if it's just us or just me that kind of has that. Like, I think of Hatton, I think first of putting, but his tee to green play has been really good.
I guess I don't think of him that way because like we've been on him and we're not really on putter only guys.
Yeah.
Like this is not a Denny McCarthy podcast. But I think, I don't know. I think he's well-rounded and I like that a lot. Let's move down to the other half of this middle tier in the mid 9,000s. Who stands out to you here?
Joaquin Niemann, there's risk here, which is not fun, but two straight missed cuts. But he's had positive strokes with his approach play in 11 straight measured events and all 5 events in 2020. Finished 46th here last year when he lost 2 strokes off the tee, but still gained 1 tee to green because he was just kind of good in approaching around the green. Definitely improving as a putter. He is 11th overall in strokes gained approach over the past 50 rounds. So I think for the price, Niemann at $9,400 is a little bit of a discount. It does factor in the missed cuts, factors in some of the risk, but Niemann is back down to where he's priced appropriately. So I like him a good bit at $9,400.
Yeah, I'm on board with Niemann if I wind up in this tier. It's not my favorite tier. It's not as hateful as it was last week where I just despise this tier. But I think that Niemann's solid. I think that Scheffler's solid, and maybe my top 2 guys there. I also like Jt Poston, who is $9,200, and consistency has been good for him recently. He has been to 6 events since January 1st, and he's made 5 cuts, which is not like a great number, but he's finished top 40 all 5 times. He also at least has a path to upside with 5 top 20s in his past 15 events, including a win. That was at the Barbasol, so, whatever. But Poston ranks 33rd in good drive rate. He is 30th in approach, 57th around the green, and he is a plus putter on Bermuda. He is 19th or 18th there over the past 100 rounds. So it's not a flashy profile for Jt Poston, but it is one that should get through the cuts and be around on Sunday. He is $9,200. I know the upside is not that great, which I'm guessing is why you will not be on him, but I'm okay with him. What are your thoughts on Jt Poston?
Yeah, I mean, his cut odds are actually quite good for the price in my simulations. I don't think that he's like the number 1 play down here, but I think he's another one of these golfers who I'm not going to talk you out of because I see the case. For me personally, it's not quite enough.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move down to the value tier, guys who are below $9,000. Who stands out for you down there?
So there are 2 value plays I love this week, and I will not talk about either of them because Jim stole them both. So I just want to get that out there. But I mean, why don't we go with heat check favorite Vaughn Taylor at $8,500? The long-term form checks out for Taylor relative to his price. He's 37th in approach over the past 50 rounds, and Bermuda is by far his best putting surface, which is always nice to see for any golfer, frankly, but especially like these value plays who might be more like course dependent to play at their best. So I'm fine with that. Taylor is always accurate. Again, 37th in approach, 35th around the green, 26th in opportunities gained, which is a fantasy national stat that's basically scoring chances. So can't hate that. He's been cut 23rd and cut the past 3 years, or his past 3 events at Bay Hill. So don't love that, but I mean, I can see the case for Taylor. Again, he's at best 3rd.
He would have been my 3rd, though, I would say.
Okay.
Because I'm always in on Vaughn Taylor when distance is not as much of a factor. And like usually Vaughn Taylor only pops an approach. But this week he pops in good drive rate, pops in Bermuda putting. So I actually do like Vaughn Taylor. Maybe we should have switched here, but I like Carlos Ortiz more, and he's one of the guys you were alluding to. Sorry, I got to the sheet first. Deal with it. And Ortiz is not as good of a putter on Bermuda as he is on other surfaces. Usually that is a plus for him, but it's not like he's bad there, I guess. I don't know. And he's really good elsewhere. Specifically, the irons are good for Ortiz. He is 25th in approach the past 50 rounds. He is also 13th around the green. Doesn't excel off the tee either, at least based on what I'm looking at this week. He's 57th in good drive rate, but he does have some distance. So I do like that for the longer holes here. He finished 29th at this event last year, so he knows the course. And he also enters with 3 straight finishes of 26th or better. So I like that a lot. I would have been okay with Vaughn Taylor, but I like Carlos Ortiz more. So sorry. What are your thoughts? What draws you towards Carlos Ortiz?
Just really balanced profile, really good tee to green. Those good finishes haven't really come from like great putting. So when you finish well without fantastic putting, I like to buy into that. And that's just kind of where I am with Ortiz this week.
He checks a lot of boxes, so very in there. Who else do you like as a value play? Again, taking Carlos Ortiz, and the next guy I have is Sebastian Munoz. So taking those two guys off the board, who else do you like? Sorry.
Brian Harman. I mean, we're now a Brian Harman podcast, but he's only $8,200.
We've been a Brian Harman podcast for 5 months now, probably.
Well, he's a balanced golfer, and anytime that there's not like it's a difficult course, so that matters to me. He is 35th or better and off the tee, around the green, and putting. 56th in approach. He's lost in 3 straight events with the approach, which keeps the ceiling low. But
maybe we killed Brian Harman. Did we kill Brian Harman?
Well, you said it's been the past 5 months. I didn't think it was quite that long, but
I think it is past 5 months.
Well, I think it's a week really to maximize the number of like upper tier golfers we can get. Harman helps us get there, but in my simulations, not a whole lot of like top 20 upsides. So I don't want to punt carelessly, and I don't see similar concerns with Sebastian Munoz or Carlos Ortiz. So that's why they're my favorite 2 low end guys.
Yep. So let's talk about Sebastian Munoz here. He fits the profile of a really well-rounded golfer, especially for someone who is this cheap at $8,600, because he does well where we want him to. He ranks 24th in approach the past 50 rounds. He is also a passable 58th place ranking in good drive rate, 49th around the green. So good in approach, not bad elsewhere, but also good splits on Bermuda, ranking 27th there. He does have some missed cut to his profile, so a little bit of risk there. Which is why I'm not as high on him on Carlos Ortiz. And it's also why I'm okay checking out guys like Bud Cauley, Maverick McNeil, maybe some Vaughn Taylor in there too. But I think that Sebastian Munoz at $8,600 is still someone I want to use, despite the fact that I know there is some missed cut to his profile. What pushes you on to Sebastian Munoz?
Just super balanced. I mean, he's top 50 in all 4 strokes gain stats over the past 50 rounds, which top 50 doesn't sound great, but that's very rare for a lot of cheaper golfers. So he's 24th in approach as well. The biggest knock is that he hasn't played here.
Yeah.
But that's really nitpicky for $8,600.
Do you have a preference between Munoz and Ortiz as your favorite guy?
It should be Ortiz. It might be Munoz. I don't really know.
Okay.
But they're both kind of going to be in probably my main lineup, I'd say.
Yeah. All right.
That's how I feel about them.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good with that. So let's do our win picks for this week. I finally won a bobblehead. It took like 16 years to get back in the win column there. But even with Brooks Koepka missing the cut because he hates me, we can address that this weekend though, Brooks. Don't you worry. So we're going to pick one golfer not named Rory McIlroy in the top tier, and then one golfer who is 50-1 or longer to win. I should probably check to make sure the odds have not moved. I don't care who I get at the top end. I have 2 guys I like. You can pick whichever one you want. I'll take the other. So I'm going to take Earl Hatton, assuming he has not moved from 50. Is he still 50? Or was he when you looked recently?
Let me vamp. I mean, I was trying to log into our spreadsheet, but I'm
Are you locked out?
I need to log in every week around like Tuesday morning. I get logged out of all my Google stuff, which is very convenient for this podcast. But I have Hatton at 50. Yeah.
Okay, so Tyrrell Hatton is my win pick at 50-1 or longer. On to you. Who do you want as your win pick for this week?
I'll put the pressure on you, and I will go with Abraham Answer.
Oh, so you're just going to make me pick?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll just go ahead with Xander.
Okay. I probably would have won Hideki anyway, which seems blasphemous, but
no, I figured you were going to because I just prefer Xander, but like again, we're just split on them. So
yeah, it's really close.
That's why I didn't care, because like they're both in the same tier to me, and like I don't care who I get.
I've already bet both of them. So
okay, at 20, or did you find a better number?
I think I got Xander at 22, but Hideki was 20. Okay, it was close. It wasn't anything significantly different from where they are now.
All right, so you have Hideki and Abraham Answer, and I have Xander Schauffele and Tyrrell Hatton. I feel really good about the Hatton one, so hopefully that one works out. Our bet for this week, which I will win, is Matthew Fitzpatrick versus Colin Morikawa. I have Matty Fitz. Go Cats. You have Morikawa, or as you like to slack me, Morikawa Bunga, and it just drives me nuts every single time. So if he wins, I will probably see that like a daily message at 9 o'clock.
You will
every morning.
So you have Xander and Hatton.
Yeah,
that was your WCG Mexico picks. Worked out pretty well, but no winners.
I didn't realize I picked them there too. 14th and 6th, was it?
Yeah.
All right, I'll take that. Gonna do it again. Looking forward to it. That is all that we have for today. Any final thoughts for you, Brandon, before we close up shop?
The realization that I'm gonna have to root against Xander again is saddening.
Good,
but between he and Hideki, I like both, and outside of Rory, they're kind of the top two guys. So
that's the problem, is I'm not going to root against Hideki either way because I like Hideki. So like if he wins, like that's fine, whatever.
Yeah. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, it's like it's got good names in each tier, which is nice because I can like it just from a pure golf perspective because there are a lot of golfers I like, but there are also a lot of golfers I feel good rooting for in each salary tier. So both from a true golf perspective and from a DFS perspective, pretty fun event. I'm excited to see how things play out, and we'll see if Rory can live up to those super, super short betting odds. That is all we have for today on the PGA side, but a reminder, we're back live on YouTube on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock for the XFL Week 5. Wow, okay. Week 5, a preview podcast. Make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page to get that live at 10 a.m. on Thursday, also posted in the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed right when we are done. So make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave a rating and review because those do help us out a ton. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter and want to taunt you after Colin Morikawa is decimated by Matthew Fitzpatrick, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for keeping us on the air here today. As always, thank you, Calvin. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. We hope things go well for you in DFS, betting, whatever it may be, for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. We'll talk to you again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by Number Fire.